Blessed is the man who walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is on the law of the Lord, and on his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. Welcome to the Bread of the Word podcast, a podcast striving to feast on God's Word and let the Bible speak to us all. Let us, as a former generation said, go ad fontes, to the fountain, and be nourished and sustained by all that God is. Let's dig in together. Hello, and welcome back to the Bread of the Word podcast, where we go ad fontes, to the fountain, to the Word of God, to be nourished and sustained by all that God is. As He's revealed Himself to us, my name is Tyler. We are continuing through the book of Job, coming to chapter 20. We had a great time in chapter 19 with that ever-famous passage, I know that my Redeemer liveth. I very much took delight in that text, and was very excited to share a little bit about it, what God had shown me in the text. Chapter 20 is not as happy of a text. This is, we're back to Zophar now. We're back to one of the three friends, Zophar, who Zophar is perhaps the most severe of the three when it comes to the statements that he lobs at Job. And it's gonna be a rough one. I'm be honest. This is not a wedding text. It's harsh. This is more of a the wicked shall be consumed kind of text. And let's see what God has to say. And so, beginning in verse 1 and reading through to verse 22. Then answered Zophar, the Naamite, and said, Therefore do my thoughts cause me to answer, and for this I make haste. I have heard the check of my reproach, and the spirit of my understanding causeth me to answer. Knowest that thou not this of old, since man was placed upon the earth, that the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment? Though his excellency mount up to the heavens, and his head reacheth unto the clouds, yet he shall perish forever like his own dung. They which have seen him shall say, Where is he? He shall fly away as a dream, and shall not be found. Yea, he shall be chased away as a vision of the night. The eye also which saw him shall see him no more, neither shall his place any more behold him. His children shall seek to please the poor, and his hands shall restore their goods. His bones are full of the sin of his youth, which shall lie down with him in the dust. Though wickedness be sweet in his mouth, though he hide it under his tongue. Though he spare it and forsake it not, but keep it still within his mouth. Yet his meat is in his bowels, is turned. It is the gall of asps within him. He hath swallowed down riches, and he shall vomit them up again. God shall cast them out of his belly. He shall suck the poison of asps, the viper's tongue shall slay him. He shall not see the rivers, the floods, the brooks of honey and butter. That which he labored for shall he restore, and shall not swallow it down. According to his substance shall the restitution be, and he shall not rejoice therein. Because he hath oppressed, and hath forsaken the poor, because he hath violently taken away an house which he builded not. Surely he shall not feel quietness in his belly, he shall not save of that which he desired. There shall none of his meat be left, therefore shall no man look for his goods. In the fullness of his sufficiency he shall be in straits. Every hand of the wicked shall come upon him. There's no rainbows and unicorns in this text. It's harsh, and this is not anything new. This is not something we're seeing and encountering for the first time in Job. This is something that we've hit on before, and we're going to hit on again. And we're probably going to hit on it again later in the book. This is something that the book really is hammering into us is the rewards of wickedness. As things normally progress, as things normally happen, the righteous are rewarded and the wicked are punished. That's the theme of Proverbs, essentially. And Job kind of gives us the non-traditional course, because Job is not suffering because he's wicked, but he suffers nonetheless. But there is a different kind of suffering. There's a different kind of act of God that takes place with wickedness, as we see from Zophar and some of the wisdom of Bildad and Eliphaz, which is biblical. It's not bad theology, it's just misapplied. And so we can take what was just said here about wickedness and we can learn from it. We can learn about God from this, knowing that it's not true about Job, but it is true in other situations and other circumstances. And so right off the bat, he says, I have heard the check of my reproach, and the spirit of my understanding causeth me to answer. That he's compelled by his sense of truthfulness to answer in this way. Knowest thou not this of old, since man was placed upon earth? I mean, you know this, that since man began, since Adam essentially, this has been found to be true. What? The triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment. Though his excellency mount up to the heavens, and his head reach into the clouds, yet he shall perish forever like his own dung. And his head, which they have seen him, shall say, where is he? The fruit of unrighteousness. That is the subject of this section. The fruit of unrighteousness. What does unrighteousness bring? If we consider Matthew 5 for a moment, we have that ever famous passage that we call the Beatitudes, which is essentially their be-attitudes. They're attitudes that we are to be, because these are the things that God blesses. These are the kinds of people that God blesses, is people in whom these things are found. And so Matthew 5, picking up in verse 3, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you, and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely, for my sake. These are the things God blesses. These are the sorts of people that God blesses. This is not the A team. This is not the 27 Yankees or anything. This is the top shelf things I would set out to make sure that people are blessed. I wouldn't look for the poor. That doesn't make sense. That's not how we think. But it's how God thinks. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are they that mourn. Blessed are those who hunger for righteousness. Essentially, blessed are those who know what they do not have. Blessed are those who recognize they have something missing. Blessed are those who are spiritually bankrupt, who have come to the end of their rope and know that what they need ultimately comes from God. These are the people that God blesses. And he blesses them, how? Through Christ, through the giving of his Son. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. That is where all of these things are found, is in the Father giving us the Son. And the life that we now have by the power of the Spirit enables us to walk in these blessings, to obtain these blessings. Because these blessings are granted to us when we know what we do not have. In a sense, it is the Declaration of Dependence. We just had July 4th, American Independence Day. Here's the Declaration of Dependence. That blessed are the empty. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are they that mourn. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. And none of those things, in that list, none of those things are found in the people that Zophar describes in Job 20. Okay, we don't have people that are poor in spirit. We don't have people that are mourning. We don't have people that are hungering and thirsting for righteousness. We don't have people that are persecuted for the sake of righteousness. None of this is here. As far as the standard of the Beatitudes goes, the people Zophar describes are not blessed by God. Using the Beatitudes as a starting point there, they are polar opposites. And the triumphing of the wicked, he says, is short. And the joy of the hypocrite is but for a moment. Though his excellency mount up to the heavens, and his head reach unto the clouds, yet he shall perish forever like his own dung. And Zophar says, this has been true since man was placed upon the earth. Going back to Adam, going back to the garden, going back to the flood. We've seen a lot of flood allusions in Job. We've seen a lot of this, that the wicked were taken away. And Jesus said that will happen again. It will be as it was in the days of Noah, that the wicked will be taken away. That he will sever the good fish, he will sever the wicked fish from the righteous. Any branch that beareth not fruit, he taketh away. That essentially that which is wrong, that which is wicked in this world shall be taken away. There was one non-believer I heard, because sometimes a broken clock is right twice a day. And I heard this one non-believer who's a psychologist, the way he answers the question, why can't I just do whatever I want? And his answer is, because everything goes to hell when you do that, including you. And that is exactly what we have here, with a deeper meaning, with a greater sense of gravity, is that when we do whatever we want, when we are bound to nothing but carnal desire, everything goes wrong. Everything dies. It says, he shall fly away as a dream, and shall not be found. Yea, he shall be chased away as a vision of the night. The eye which saw him shall see him no more, neither shall his place any more behold him. That the idea is that the wicked person vanishes. He goes away. He is taken out of this place. That's the first component that Zophar lays out for us, is that the wicked are simply taken away. Psalm 2 builds onto this a little bit with the idea of God being opposed to that which is wicked. Psalm 2. This is the kind of song we wage battle to. This is one of those battle songs of the Prince of Peace. Psalm 2, verse 1. Why do the heathen rage, and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, his Mashiach, his Messiah. That's a reference to Christ. Against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. Let us break our bonds to the God of creation. Let us divorce ourselves from the Lord. That is essentially the cry of the kings of the earth. And as we look at minor politics, that is abundantly clear. Let us break our bands asunder. Let us be independent from our Maker. That is so far too often the cry of our culture, the cry of our leaders, the cry of our hearts. Let us break our bands asunder. And he that sitteth in the heavens shall give them mercy. He that sitteth in the heavens shall pour out his grace upon them. No. It says, he that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision. Then shall he speak unto them in his wrath, and vex them in his sore displeasure. Yet have I, says the psalmist, set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. The Lord hath said unto me, Thou art my son. This day have I begotten thee. I believe this is in reference to Christ, who is king. He has all authority in heaven and on earth. And the Father says to the Son, Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee, meaning he has been made king not just in the heavens, but on the earth. Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron, thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. That's Christ. That's the meek and lowly shepherd we read about in the Gospels. Same person. Same figure. That he is a shepherd who guides, but also he is a shepherd who defends. Be wise now, therefore, O ye kings. Be instructed, ye judges of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear, and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. So when the wicked set themselves in opposition to the things of God, God laughs. And ultimately God will be vindicated on the earth. Ultimately God will be victorious over those who would set themselves against him, who would take counsel together amongst themselves in the rebellion against God. One of the fruits of unrighteousness is removal. That he shall fly away as a dream, and shall not be found. He shall be chased away as a vision of the night. Verse 10, his children shall seek to please the poor, and his hands shall restore their goods. His bones are full of the sin of his youth, which shall lie down with him in the dust. Though wickedness be sweet in his mouth, though he hide it under his tongue, though he spare it and forsake it not, but keep it still within his mouth, yet his meat in his bowels is turned. It is the gall of asps, that is vipers, snakes, poisonous snakes, or venomous snakes, venomous snakes within him. He hath swallowed down riches, and he shall vomit them up again. God shall cast them out of his belly. In strong language. Just as we see the whale in Jonah, or the big fish, or whatever term you want to use, it says it vomited Jonah onto dry land. This is not a word that gets used very often. God's not mincing words here when he says vomit them. This is intentional. This is actually kind of violent. It's not consensual. And the picture being that God shall take. That God shall take your stuff. God shall plunder you. Just as we've seen Job allude to with God as the overpowerer, as El Shaddai, the overpowerer, or with the idea of God as an avenger, or one who has overtaken me. So we have God who shall plunder the wicked, who shall empty their house. Not just take them out of the place, but all of the rewards that they have, all the gains they have from their wickedness ultimately shall not stay with them. That their house shall become desolate. One pattern that we see throughout the Old Testament is, more often than not, money and finances and wages and talk of riches is commonly used in a negative light. When we read about money, when we read about people taking payment or amassing wealth, it is almost always in an exploitive way. When we see money talked about in the Old Testament, it's usually usually acquired through sin. It's usually acquired through things that God does not delight in. And the thing about Israel is that every time they went astray, went away from God's designs, it always led to oppression. It always led to injustice. It always led to making victims of other people. And that's why God speaks so strongly in the prophets, why he talks the way he does in Amos, take away from me the noise of thy songs, but let justice flow down like water, and righteousness as a mighty stream. Because every time Israel worships idols, it always brings tyranny, it always brings oppression, it always comes down hard on other people. That people become collateral in their sin. And God is just. God will be vindicated. And just as we're told that God lives in a high and lofty place, we're also told that he lives with the meek, the lowly, and the contrite. The very thing that we're told preceded Moses being called at the burning bush to go be an instrument of their liberation from Egypt, we're told that God has heard their cries, has heard the cries of the oppressed. Because that is what sin makes us into. That is where we go. There's no if and or but about this. When the people worship idols, bad things happen. Both by their own hands and by the hand of God. The God shall come down on us for those things. If we go to the book of Nahum, Nahum is one of the only books of the prophets that is not addressed to Israel. It's actually addressed to Nineveh. This is after Jonah. After Jonah has preached repentance and has gone wherever he went after chapter 4. We've kind of left open-ended. We're not really sure where Jonah went after that. The story just ends there. And Nahum picks up sometime after. We're not sure entirely how long after. Maybe a generation or two. Or longer or shorter. Hard to say. But Nahum preaches to Nineveh. So Nahum chapter 1, verse 1 says, "The burden of Nineveh, the book of the vision of Nahum, the Cushite." That's how the book starts, is the burden of Nineveh. That these things are a burden upon Nineveh. The book of the vision of Nahum is Nineveh's burden. Keep that in mind. God is jealous, and the Lord revengeth. The Lord revengeth and is furious, and the Lord will take vengeance on his adversaries, and he reserveth wrath for his enemies. Usually start with like, "Dear John," or "I hope this email finds you well." It's more like, "I hope this email finds you before I do." The Lord is slow to anger and great in power, and will not at all acquit the wicked. The Lord hath his way in the whirlwind and in the storm, and the clouds are the dust of his feet. He rebuketh the sea and maketh it dry, and drieth up all the rivers. Bashan languisheth, and Carmel, and the flower of Lebanon languisheth. The mountains quake at him, and the hills melt, and the earth is burned at his presence. Yea, the world and all that dwell therein. Who can stand before his indignation, and who can abide in the fierceness of his anger? His fury is poured out like fire, and the rocks are thrown down by him. Fun. Verse 7, the Lord is good. That does not contradict that God is jealous or that God is a revenger. But he is just. He is a revenger. He is a jealous God because he is also good. That God is a God of wrath. He is a God of great violence against evil because he is good. And a stronghold in the day of trouble. And he knoweth them that trust in him. But with an overrunning flood he will make an utter end of the place thereof, and darkness shall pursue his enemies. Obadiah is also written to a foreign nation. And they dwelled up in the mountains in the clefts of the rocks. And God said, I will bring you down. I will bring you down though you dwell in the clefts of the rocks. I will make your safe places unsafe, so to speak. God is just. God is capable of great violence upon his enemies, upon that which is wicked and evil. And it flows from his goodness, not from just unbridled emotion, but from his goodness. That because he is good, because he is just, you have this. That ultimately we can trust in the sovereignty of his judgment. We can trust in the sovereignty of God's wrath. That the wicked will not stay. That wickedness will not prevail on God's earth. In God's world, wickedness does not win. Many of us can quote Psalm 46. Be still and know that I am God. But what's the rest of that verse say? I will be exalted among the heathens. That even the heathen nations, even the Gentiles shall know that he is God. And so God takes away the wicked. He also takes away all of the gains, all of the spoils of their wickedness. Verse 18. That which he labored for shall he restore, and shall not swallow it down. According to his substance shall the restitution be, and he shall not rejoice therein. That is, that the Lord will repay evil for evil. Because he hath oppressed and hath forsaken the poor, he hath violently taken away a house which he builded not. Surely he shall not feel quietness in his belly. He shall not save of that which he desired. There shall none of his meat be left, and therefore shall no man look for his goods. In the fullness of his sufficiency he shall be in straits. Every hand of the wicked shall come upon him. Essentially, that they shall eat their own. That other wicked people will be an instrument of God's wrath. That part of the purging that we see here is going to come from other wicked people. That you have no real friends this deep in sin. Because everybody is just as wicked as you. That just as it was the hand of God that brought the Philistines as judgment upon Israel, so it was also the hand of God that rose up enemies against these other nations. Because you had Babylon, and Babylon was taken by Persia. And Persia, before that, I think you had Assyria, you had Assyria, and then you had Persia, and eventually you had Rome. And all of this came out of the sovereign plan of God. That God raised up wicked nations to take out wicked nations, who had in turn taken out a righteous nation, so to speak. That the people of God were brought into subjection to Babylon. And Babylon would serve Persia. And Persia would eventually bow to Rome. And Rome would crumble in a day. Rome would collapse in on itself. And there would be a power vacuum of all of these other ungodly people groups trying to claim what Rome had to take the spoils of Rome for themselves. And it was the hand of God, ultimately, that brought these things to pass. That nothing came to pass outside of his care. And just as it was true there, so also God sustained a group of Roman soldiers who would cut down a tree and would make a cross out of it. That the soldiers who hung Jesus on the cross had their needs met by God through a life of wickedness for his purposes, for his own glory. And so, when we see this picture of God's justice upon the wicked, that their camp shall become desolate, that they shall vomit out the riches that they have acquired for themselves, this shall be done to the glory of God, that he shall be exalted among the heathen. And so, as believers, there is a sense of joy that we can have in this reality, in recognizing this fact, because this is the God who fights for us. This is the God who will be vindicated against evil. The same God who has brought us into his family is the same God who will be vindicated, not against us, because we have been brought into his fold. We are on his side now. Just as it says in Romans, if God is for us, who can be against us? This is where we live, is that we are on the side of God. That we hunger and thirst for righteousness. We are the blessed people of God because of what God has brought into us. What he has called us out of and what he has called us to. He's set us free from sin and freed us unto righteousness. And so we were once alienated. We were once the enemies of God. But now we've become children of God. We've become slaves unto righteousness. We have become co-heirs with Christ and are seated in the heavenly places with him, with an inheritance that is incorruptible, undefilable. And I could go adjective after adjective after adjective about the many blessings we have in Christ. Because the dominion of sin no longer reigns in our hearts. And any wrestling we have with sin is ultimately with a conquered enemy. Because we have been grafted into Christ. And this chapter, chapter 20, is not about us. It is not about the people of God. It is about the enemies of God. And even the enemies of God, as we once were, can be redeemed and made to stand in the heavenly places. And ponder that reality. The distance that God traveled to bring you into his family. When he very easily could have wiped you out. That's grace. That is the grace of God. That we were hostile in mind and engaged in evil deeds. That we were hostile to God. And yet God made us to love him. He gave us a new heart. He's renewing our minds. He's inclining us to that which he delights in. Because by nature we don't delight in what delights God. He's made us new people. This is our declaration of dependence, that we are his. We who were once opposed to him and cried with Psalm 2, let us break our bands asunder. We are now his. Thank you for listening. This has been the Bread of the Word podcast. Bread of the Word is a podcast ministry striving to feed people the wonderful words of God, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse, striving to let the Word speak for itself. This ministry is also a member of the Truth and Love Network, a diverse fellowship of fellow podcasts of different theological backgrounds, united in the gospel of God. For more from the Bread of the Word podcast or the Truth and Love Network, check out the links below and follow us on social media. Until next time, God bless. Matthew 4:4.